Our next bait is a favorite for both saltwater fishers and freshwater. This bait is known for being found on the beaches, and it quacks quite a punch if you let it bite you. These are lugworms, also known as sandworms or bloodworms, and as you can see, you want to be careful of their heads. They are very painful bites. You can also get these pre-made ones by Gulp, who make sandworms, and you can see they look very realistic. When handling them, you want to hold them very much like a snake, so that way they can't get that extended pinchers out past your hand. And those pinchers are resting inside the throat, so where I'm holding it right now, I'm actually holding those pinchers in place so it can't extend them out. I've got a 2/0 bait hook, and I'm just going to go ahead and kind of force the tip down its mouth. And unlike earthworms where you're actually piercing the skin, if you put it just right down here, you're not actually going through it. You're actually traveling right down the intestinal gut, and this is keeping the worm alive as long as possible. Now when you get down to a certain point, you go ahead and put the hook through the body. I like to leave the worm kind of a little bit around the J of the hook. Some guys like to leave it so that J is fully out and the worm's nice and flat and straight. I like to leave that crook in there so when I pull it in on a Carolina rig, it kind of gives it a little bit of a spin and twirl. It makes it seem more alive. Now here's another option. I've used an offset worm hook, and I've got a bigger worm for this one, so this is why I'm going to use a bigger offset worm hook for this guy. This will be more for bass, sturgeon. I caught some catfish on these guys, these sandworms, and primarily I also catch a lot of halibut and saltwater fish. Saltwater fish really love these guys. I think the reason they do so well in freshwater as well is because they are a saltwater worm that lives within the beach in the surf zone. It actually has a more oily skin than a regular worm, so when it goes into the water, it releases more scent than a typical worm would, and I think this is why freshwater and saltwater fish are attracted to it. As you can see here, when you do it that way and you put it down the gut, they're very lively. And you can also cut them up and they stay very independently moving on their own as a kind of safety feature for defense, so as whatever's dealing with the body, the whole head can get away. This allows you to use smaller hooks and not have to use the whole worm if you're down to a couple last worms. I've caught many catfish and many other kinds of rockfish and halibut in the saltwater as well. I've also caught sturgeon in some freshwater lakes on squid, as well as caught actually some bass on some cut baits. I was using a high-low and I got a couple smallmouth bass that went after the squid.